I was born in Cleethorpes at Croft Baker, and then we lived for a while with my grandmother who lived off Queen Mary Avenue. And then our lives changed when my father and mother took over the management of the Pier Hotel, which was, locals will know it as a submarine, but it was opposite the pier. So to a small child it was like, oh my God, it was so exciting. My mum and dad, they opened a nightclub called the Sands nightclub. So we had lots of entertainers coming all the time. The books are set in the theatre in that square mile that I played as a child with the Empire Theatre, the pier, and then just weave a story about a girl that comes from Norfolk and she appears in a summer show and what happens to her after that. My latest book is called The Women of Fisher's Wharf. It's published by Boldwood on October the 17th. And that's really the culmination of all the stories my grandmother told me. So when I was a little girl, my grandmother was one of 8. Her eldest brother, Alf, was a trawler skipper, as were her 3 younger brothers. Her father was a trawler skipper. They were really well known in the area. And Nanny would tell me all these stories of, you know, where they lived. And my mum tells me the stories as well. Well, when great uncle Alf was 25, he was the skipper of the Leicestershire. And Nanny said, when the ship was lost with all hands and her brother died, that was the biggest shock of her life. And then the second biggest shock was when her husband died in the war and she was widowed. I think she was 26. And she said after that, all the other shocks in her life didn't seem to affect her the same. And that stuck in my mind more than anything. So I would ask her to tell me more about Uncle Alf and his ship, tell me more about when great-granddad came home, what was it like for the women. And I'd have all these small details and the details that my mum told me of being a child in the war. So I sort of gathered all these stories, and Nanny would say to me, somebody should write these stories down or they'll be lost forever. And I can't have been very old at the time, but I said, Nanny, I'll write them down for you, I'll make sure. It took me lots of years, but this is the book, really, that I promised Nanny that I would write all those years ago. And it's not the truth, it's the essence of truth. But the characters have a life on their own. So the way they live and where they interact on the docks and the life of the men of sea is truth, but it's all fabricated if you know, the characters are just a figment of my imagination.